Good evening and welcome to the third in a series of forums for the candidates for office for the November 5th elections, being brought to you by Cayuga Community College, the Citizen, and ARMA, the Auburn Regional Media Access. I'm your moderator, Guy Cosentino. On November 5th, the voters in the town of Sennett will go to the polls to not only vote for a number of town offices, but specifically for town supervisor. And if you haven't driven out there, there's a couple of signs out there right now. We're delighted to have with us in the studio today the candidates that are running for that office, Jeff Herrick, who is the incumbent, and his challenger, Thomas Gray. The position of supervisor is a part-time job that has a base pay of roughly $14,000 per year. Representing the press today is Jeremy Boyer, who is the executive editor of The Citizen. As you may know, he has been asking questions for all the forums this year and has been doing so for the last several for us. Prior to taping of the show, the candidates drew lots to see who would make their opening statement first, and then we'll reverse that order at the closing. Our candidates who are sitting in the order of their opening statements are Jeff Herrick, the incumbent, who is on the Republican and conservative lines, and Mr. Gray, who is on the Democratic line. I want to thank them for agreeing to appear today. We'll start with Mr. Herrick. You have 2 minutes for your opening statements, and again, you're on the Republican and conservative lines.
Well, thank you, Guy. Thank you again, Jeremy, and my opponent, Tom, and the reporters here and the students. I started out back about 2002. I started on the planning board in the town of Sennett. I was on the planning board for a number of years. I moved over to the town board. I was on that for 2 years, and I'm seeking my 3rd term as supervisor in the town of Sennett. I spend a lot of time making sure the town's in great shape financially. We're very strong. We have a number of new houses that have gone up this year. We have a number of new businesses that have gone up this year on Route 5. We have a couple exciting businesses I'd like to talk about today. So I'm looking forward to my 3rd term. I've been out going door to door in very positive direction. There doesn't seem to be a lot of groundswell of incumbents seem to be being received very well. So I look forward to my 3rd term as supervisor, and I'm certainly going to represent the people the way I have been, and I would just like to continue to do what I've been doing for the past 8 years in the town of Sennett.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray, you have 2 minutes. You're on the Democratic line.
I'd like to thank the committee too, Mr. Boyer, Mr. Cosentino, the college students. They do a fine job. 4 years ago, I ran for supervisor on the Democratic line. I sat in the same forum. We talked. 1,300 or 1,400 people voted. I lost as a Democrat by 60-some votes. I felt that was very good. I went home. I took my signs. I stuck them down behind the furnace and said, that's a good spot for them. Let's leave them there. I didn't. I work at the town offices. For the past 8 years, I've been the deputy clerk, the historian, the water clerk, and the deputy registrar. I'm in the office every day that I'm in town for a few minutes to maybe an hour or two visiting with people. When the clerk is away, I run the office. I really enjoy working with the people of Sennett. The last summer, not this summer, the past summer, I've just decided, and I told a few people that if things continued the way they were in Sennett, then I would have to run again. I'm enjoying my retirement. I've been retired as a teacher for 8 years. I like working in the town office, but I didn't like what was going on. So for the past month or so, I've been around visiting people. I've been visiting people that have had problems with the town. I've been invited to visit different people, and I've been doing a lot of research. When I went to visit these people, I made it right up front that I was not the supervisor. I was not Sennett town government. I wasn't going to promise them anything. I was just going to listen and go on a fact-finding. That's 2 minutes.
Mr. Gray, you'll be able to continue as we go through the questions. Your 2 minutes are up. And we do have Jonathan, who's a freshman here at the college, who's keeping time. He will show a sign when we're at a minute, and then 2 minutes when we're to stop.
Okay.
So you can follow up a little bit. Mr. Boyer.
All right, well, I'm going to start off with an issue that drew a lot of attention to the town I guess over the summer it was, the tax rebate that was sent out to residents. From the surplus that the town had, the town board made a decision to send $100 checks out. My question for both candidates is, given that we're hearing so much about municipalities and the struggles they're having, and the importance of having a strong surplus and a rainy day fund, if you will, around, was that the prudent thing to do to take some money out of that in that way, or was it why was it the right thing to do from your mind, and did you agree with that decision, Mr. Gray, in terms of it being the fiscally prudent thing to do at the time?
And this is for both candidates?
Yes.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Herrick, go back and forth, and then we'll reverse. Mr. Herrick, you have 2 minutes on
Okay,
this.
the one of the reasons that the town's in great financial shape is because of the operating expenses. We've cut our operating expenses by about $690,000 over the past 5 years. There was a code enforcement officer making $80,000. There was 2 staff attorneys. They're all gone. We've reduced our operating expenses by over $690,000. Those are just the facts. On the flip side, we've increased business growth. On Grand Avenue, we've increased housing. Our sales tax income is up, and our expenses are down. That's led to the surplus. It's just that simple. Is it the right thing to do? Absolutely, it's the right thing to do. Because, in my view, government does not belong in the banking business. We got this money sitting here. Our budgets are lean. Our operations are lean. We have extra money sitting around. We can invest it in certain areas, but one of the issues that we found out to be a fact that we could do this was whatever it was we were going to do with our surplus, it needed to be spread equally amongst every homeowner in the town. So we wrote the legislation. It took a year to do it. We budgeted the money prior to the checks coming out. We wrote a home rule bill sponsored by Senator DeFrancisco and Assemblyman Bob Oakes, and it made its way through the chain. Governor Cuomo signed it, and it's the right thing to do. And tonight is our budget meeting, our budget conference at the town hall, and I have budgeted the same amount as I did last year so that we can do it again next year. But it has to be done a year prior you just can't write a check. You got to go through the home legislation all over again. So it was the right thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray, you have 2 minutes on this issue of the tax rebate.
Okay, tax rebate. They told Senator DeFrancisco that they had a $1.75 million unreserved funds. So they wanted to distribute that. They passed out some flyers, even as late as yesterday, saying that they had $3.4 million in unreserved funds. They gave $100 to homeowners, renters, but not the business people. That $100, if the budget was the surplus was $3.4 million, was 3%. If they wanted to give away the whole surplus, which is not feasible either, they could have given each of those people $3,300. It came out the checks came out 3 days before the primary, following a letter to everybody that they were getting it, following a press conference. 2 years ago at this forum, Mr. Herrick made a pledge, and I want to read it. He said, economic times are hard. Oh, this wasn't the forum, this was the election preview. Economic times are hard. There's no question about it. That's the big thing. I can help reduce the burden of county taxes on town residents, he said. This was in the October 31st election preview 2 years ago. Nothing has been done. The surplus is sitting there. They've cut expenses by $600,000 or $400,000. They put it in the surplus. We don't need $3.4 million in surplus. We need to give money back to our county taxpayers and reduce their taxes as they did in the past.
I'd like to respond.
You'll have 1 minute.
Okay, first of all, the process that we sent, the legislation that we sent to the state of New York included the businesses. The state legislature eliminated the business portion of the home rule law based on the fact that legislation that was put up there by Clifton Park back in 2007 did not allow money to go back to the businesses. That was not a town of Sennett decision, that was a state legislature decision. So as far as the businesses getting rebate, it was in there. However, unfortunately, the state legislature took it out. There is a surplus, there's going to be a surplus. It's not prudent to give back a huge check just to make ends meet.
Thank you.
The surplus is there, and it's going to be there for years to come.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray, anything to add? Or
Yes, but a $3.4 million surplus, it affects your borrowing powers. It affects your getting grants. 2 years ago, they used to give the first sales tax check. In 2010, it was $245,000 to reduce people's county taxes. They took that away. you can take part of that surplus this year, next year, and other years, and get what Mr. Herrick pledged 2 years ago. We need to reduce people's county taxes. And when you reduce people's county taxes by going on the tax levy, you're fairly distributing to everybody, including businesses.
Okay. Mr. Herrick, you'll get 1 minute, and
Yep.
if Mr. Gray wants to, then we'll move on.
Sure. The decision, we had three options. Give it back in a $100 check, reduce the county taxes, or reduce the school taxes. We had three options. The board, as a whole, chose to do the rebate check. Certainly next year, you can do the county taxes, you can take a look at the school taxes, you can do the same thing over again. It's a board decision. So the board made the decision to do the $100 rebate check. That's what the decision was, and that's what we did. So,
And how appropriate, 3 days before the primary, the check comes out. I worked in the office last week, people are still waiting for their checks, some of them. We need to give people tax relief. We have the capability of doing it and getting the surplus down to something manageable that still protects the town. I propose that we make those reductions in county taxes by giving some of the sales tax back to the county. It's the fair way to do it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Before Mr. Boyer goes, just want to remind you on timing. Jonathan will hold up the sign at 1 minute, which is the yellow caution, and then at 2 minutes for stop. And
Okay.
just make it easier. Neither of you did anything wrong. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure it's easier
Fine,
for
no
you.
problem.
Mr. Boyer.
Okay, a little bit on the same topic, just to go on to a related issue. There was a resident survey sent out and had a number of different areas that it asked residents for their input, but one section did include a series of questions related to the sales tax checks. And you know, my question for the supervisor is, was that used as a tool to promote the incumbents that voted for this, or was that, why was that an appropriate use of taxpayer money to ultimately pay for mailings to go out and get?
sure.
Put
So that's
survey out
specifically
there?
for Mr. Herrick, but Mr. Gray will have 2 minutes to answer.
The surveys were sent out based on the fact that, believe it or not, when you go door to door, Jeremy, and when you're out there, people who live in your town, some of them just simply don't know what's going on. It's that simple. There's we wanted more feedback on a lot of other questions on there. Some people didn't know they were getting a rebate check. Some people did know. Some people had heard about it. We as a town, and we also have another problem in our town. People don't have internet access. People don't get the newspaper. So a lot of people don't actually hear the information that's going around town. The survey was designed to ask a bunch of questions to figure out whether or not anybody had any more feedback as far as zoning, planning, what to do with the future, about Route 20, Route 5, Route 34. There was a lot of other things on the survey other than the rebate check. Believe it or not, there was people who didn't know they were going to get one. But as it habit, we did it based on the assessment rolls, and everybody who was a residential property owner got a rebate check. And to Mr. Gray's point that people are still waiting for them, I haven't heard that. So I don't believe that to be true.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray, you'll have 2 minutes on this issue of the survey.
Back in May, and we'll talk about zoning later, the town board finished up their review or rewrite of the zoning laws. They needed one more item. They needed to do a survey to change the comprehensive plan, and they wanted a survey, and I've got the items right from the board minutes. They wanted to survey commercial use of Route 34, Route 5, and Route 20. They wanted to survey whether people wanted to increase water districts, which is a good thing for the survey, and they wanted to survey the purchase of the Tubman Center, what uses it would be. That was in May. The board approved that survey in June. Mr. Gage, councilman, fronted the survey, got it together. We called TOMA. When the survey came out, we were quite alarmed. I was quite alarmed. It was very political in nature. Question number 15. Are you aware that the town eliminated the town tax 2 years ago and runs town exclusively on sales tax revenues? Yes or no? Let's get right down to 18. Are you aware the town has cut expenses by nearly 25%? 16. Are you aware that the town revenues have sharply declined in the last 4 years, sales tax revenues, due to an economic downturn? Yes or no? The sales tax from 2010 to 2012 or 13 in Sennett went up 13.2%. It didn't go down as they put in the survey. It was misleading. The survey came out after the primary and just before the election. It cost the town taxpayers $5,000.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Herrick, if you want to respond, you'll have 1 minute.
Well, the survey was sent out so that we, as elected people, can get information back from the residents. The questions were put on there because people don't even know that they don't pay any town taxes. There is no town property tax in the town of Sennett. We eliminated that 3 years ago. So there is, people think, well, I pay taxes in the town of Sennett. Sure you do. You pay your county, you pay your school, you pay your fire district, and a water district if you have it. Other than that, there is no town property taxes. Believe it or not, people were unaware of that. So we wanted to make it clear that the town finances were in great shape. We wanted people to understand where their money was coming from, where it was going, and how we were operating the town based on sales tax income. We run the town exclusively on sales tax. There's other building permit fees and other cable fees and stuff that come in. But other than that, we run this town on sales tax income. We want to make it clear on the survey.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray, if you would like to respond, you have 1 minute as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to respond a little bit more later. For 3 years, they've been preaching no town tax. Now picture this. 3 years ago, this town gave the county, the last year they did it, $245,000 to reduce the tax levy. 3 years ago, they decided we can take the $1 a thousand town tax down to zero. Now, if you're assessed for $100,000, your town tax was $100. They stuck the $100 in your front pocket, and when they pulled the sales tax revenues that they were giving to the county back, the $245,000, the $269 the year before, your county taxes went up 10%. They robbed from Peter to pay Paul, smoke and mirrors, whatever you want to call it. Your taxes were not reduced. But for the past 3 years, all we've heard is we've gotten rid of town taxes. We've never heard that your county taxes increased by 10%.
Briefly.
You'll have 1 minute, and then Mr. Gray will also have a minute.
First of all, if you want to complain about your county taxes, go to the county legislature. We don't have anything to do with county taxes. If they go up, it's not because of the town of Sennett. Go complain to them. Don't complain to the town hall. We have no town taxes. We're proud of it. We're happy to do it. We will try to continue to do it. Sales tax will increase. If you complain about your county taxes, go to the legislature and tell them. Don't tell the town people in Sennett because we have nothing to do with it, period.
Mr. Gray, you'll have 1 minute, and then we're going to move on to the next question.
I don't have to complain to the county legislature. The $245,000 that year, 3 years ago, that they didn't give to the county, the first sales tax check, that happened to be the year that the county would apply it to the top of the tax levy for Sennett. Everybody in Sennett would get a fair reduction in their taxes. That year that they took it away to give you the no town tax, the town taxes in Sennett went up over 10%. It had nothing to do with the county. It had nothing to do with anything else. If we went back to that trend, we have the money now to keep the town tax at zero and put a sizable deposit each year back to reduce the taxes of the people in Sennett, the burden they're facing. So it's smoke and mirrors.
Thank you. Mr. Boyer.
Okay. With all this sales tax money that's flowing in, your neighbors, the city of Auburn, have been asking for the county and the towns to sit down and come up with a different formula because their argument is the city's not getting their fair share anymore because of just the way things have evolved and the infrastructure that the city's supplying to extend out to towns and support businesses certainly costs the city money. Just from your perspective, I mean, are you open to a reworking of the sales tax distribution formula within Cayuga County to try to help Auburn with some of its financial struggles?
And this is for
both.
Okay, Mr. Gray, you'll go first on this one.
I did some investigation. I talked to Fred Farrell last week, who's our assessor, and I asked him how sales tax is determined in its distribution. The city gets a percentage of the county taxes and the city taxes that they collect. The state gets 4%, the county gets 2%, and the towns divide 2%. That assessment is based on what you pay in. Owasco and Sennett have the highest assessments. They pay the highest property taxes. They each pay about 7% of the county's property tax levy for the town. And they get back 7% of the kitty. So the town of Sennett pays a little over $2 million $2.5 million in county taxes. Last year they got $1,063,000 back. It's a fair and equitable exchange. As supervisor, I will fight and argue with the county to maintain that share. It's the fair distribution. If you pay 8% in, you should get 8% back. If another town pays 4% in, they should get 4% back. This whole picture came up because they had press conferences and everything that they were rich enough to give everybody $100. And within a day, the papers were clamoring, the county legislature was clamoring, the city officials were holding meetings with the county legislatures to change the sales tax revenues. I will fight to the end to keep that share, but it's in the hands of the county.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. On this issue of sales tax in the city, Mr. Herrick, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. I'm not greedy. I don't want the town board to be greedy. Any benefit that the city of Auburn could, from the musical festival and all the development that's going on down there, I'm certainly willing to sit down and openly, talk about it. I'd like to see the board change. In one aspect, I'd like to see it stay, some of the incumbents stay because they were on the right track. And up comes election. But be that as may, I've tried to work with water and sewer with the city, and that was unsuccessful. I'm not going to close the door to any negotiations with them as far as sales tax formula. Anything that they can do to benefit the county will benefit all of us. And if somebody builds a new place in Fairhaven, we benefit. Somebody builds Aurora, a typical great example. See, the town of Aurora, there's a lot of investment out there. Every time a new business goes up, a new sales tax come in, it benefits all of us, everybody. So, as far as the formula is concerned, it'll stay the same. There's a long process to change that sales tax formula as far as the county is concerned. I don't foresee it happening, but again, we can. I'm willing to sit down and listen to the city of Auburn. I'm willing to listen to the county. I'm not going to say never because that's not the right thing to do. Sales tax right now for us is an advantage to us. We run the town on it. I won't see it depleted. However, if there's some investment that can be made that can benefit all of us, and more business can be driven, I'm all for that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray, you wanted a minute. You'll have that.
Yes, I'd like to reiterate. We need to give our people tax relief. I've walked up and down the roads of Sennett since June, talking to people. The people in the Elbridge School District are complaining about the high school taxes they pay. One lady told me on Depot Road a couple of Saturdays ago that if she moved her house over onto Miller Road into the Skaneateles School District, her school taxes would be half. They want tax relief. We can use that sales tax money, or parts of it, chunks of it each year, to help reduce the burden of county taxes. We have no control over the school taxes because we have 4 school districts in town.
Thank you. Mr. Herrick, do you wish to respond?
No, like I said, I'm open to listening to what the question was about the city of Auburn and the county. I don't believe the county is in any position right now to change the formula. However, I will say there's been talk about the sales tax formula being revised for economic development reasons. I'm all for it. If they're going to take a little bit of that sales tax money, invest it in economic development, I'll vote for it any day. Because again, any investment that's made in this county benefits the town of Sennett. So I'm willing to sit down and listen.
Mr. Gray, you'll have 1 minute.
I've already had my response.
Okay, if you want to respond again, I will let this go one more round.
Well, I believe in investment too. I believe that we need to get out there and get the sales tax increased and help everybody. But the principal thing is, let's help the taxpayers in the town because we have the capability of helping them and still keeping a large surplus.
Mr. Herrick, anything?
I'm good.
All right. Just as a matter of identification where we are, we're about just a little short of halfway through the town supervisor for Sennett forum for election 2013. We have in the studio with us the incumbent, Jeffrey Herrick, who's on the Republican and conservative lines, and his challenger, Thomas Gray, who is on the Democratic line, and they're being questioned by Jeremy Boyer. Mr. Boyer.
Okay. Well, 4 years ago we were here and I asked you a few questions about that restaurant on Route 20, and it's changed hands, I know, and opened up with a different type of food and everything, but there's still some issues going on with that. And I guess the main issue now, it seems, is the use of the second floor in the of the bucket barbecue, and whether the town whether it was appropriate for the town to allow that to happen. So I'm wanting to know your stance, each of you, on whether you think that business should be able to use the second floor or not.
And this is for both candidates?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Herrick had the first two questions as first. Mr. Gray, you had the last question first. You'll go again first for 2 minutes.
4 years or 5 years ago, we lived through an experience of the Bonkas. Sennett was in the papers, in the community, and it was a lot of bad press. It was a bad experience for everybody involved, and it was very costly. The ZBA did what they needed to do. They took it through the process. The town took the ZBA to court, the local judges, and then it went to the 4th District Appeals Court in Rochester. The question was, in a residential area, the codes, you can take it a business like a restaurant. It must remain a restaurant. It can become a school, a church, or a residence. The court in Rochester ruled 5-0 that because the original restaurant, the Pioneer, the second floor was a residence in a residential area based on the laws and the zones, it must remain a residence. The neighbors, when the new restaurant opened up, wanted to make sure that the town followed that decision and followed those codes, because they're looking at what's going to happen down the street or across the street or at the synagogue on John Smith. All they wanted the town to do was to follow the court decision and the codes. Should they be able to use the second floor? At this point, because of the code, the answer has to be no. The problem with this is, I'll get back to it, okay?
Thank you.
So that's
Mr. Herrick, you'll have 2 minutes on this issue of
So
the
let's be
barbecue.
clear. Mr. Gray's political party boss, Mr. Paul Bush, he's a Democrat, he's the chairman. Mr. Gray is a Democrat. Mr. Rizzo is a Democrat who's running with him. All three of these gentlemen have challenged the use of the upstairs again, wasting taxpayers' money because somewhere along the line somebody says that a judge said you can't use the upstairs. That's not true. Get your facts right. First of all, the appellate court did not rule that you couldn't use the upstairs. The appellate court agreed with Judge Leone that the use of the upstairs was never appealed. So it never made it in front of the zoning board. His party boss and his other companion, Mr. Rizzo, they sued the town, and here we go again. The zoning board is about to rule on it again next week. Should they use the upstairs of the restaurant? Absolutely. Absolutely they should use it. They should use it because in 1932, when it was a restaurant, it was used. It's been a restaurant since 1932, and these neighbors have done nothing but waste our money, spend time. I support the bucket. I support the upstairs. I believe they will be successful. And if Mr. Bush and Mr. Rizzo and Mr. Gray want to sue the town again and bring it back up to court, by my opinion, Judge Leone will rule again. Judge Leone did not rule the first time because he said, in his words, it wasn't appealed. Therefore, when Mr. Bush, his party boss, appealed again, Judge Leone sent it back to the zoning board and said, fine, give me the facts. So that's what has transpired the last 3 months. And I have all the facts in front of me.
First off, let's get something straight. I have not sued the town. I have not even been involved with the neighbors. I have never attended any of their meetings. I haven't been involved at all. I knew I was running for office. I stayed out of the fight. The neighbors want the town to follow the rules. They're afraid if things take place there, they'll go on down the road. This whole issue came about when Mr. Herrick declared in the paper they can do anything they want, inside, outside. They've got carte blanche. They could have had carte blanche had they changed the zoning laws or appealed the decision in court. They didn't get around to change the zoning laws. We were 3 years into that process. And they haven't appealed the decision in court, so they need to uphold the decision. The second floor will remain a residence. I feel bad about the situation, and I'm not involved with the neighbors in the case. As far as political bosses, Mr. Rigby owned the restaurant. He's running Mr. Gage, or Mr. Herrick's campaign, Mr. Gage and Mr. O'Connell's. His name's on the petition as the contact
Thank
person.
you, Mr. Gray. Mr. Herrick, you'll get a minute on this.
Well, again, you know, it's been a restaurant since 1932. We spent enough time, enough money, and enough grumbling about it. Right now, they're using the upstairs. In my opinion, they will continue to use the upstairs. Zoning, that building predates zoning. So they were given the use of the upstairs by the code enforcement officer and not the town. I didn't grant them the upstairs. It was granted them by the code enforcement officer, and they are using it. They will continue to use it. And as far as I can see to the future, I wish the whole issue would just resolve itself, because unless they bring it up again, the town board has absolutely no dog in the fight. As far as me, I support the upstairs. I support the bucket barbecue. If it wasn't the bucket barbecue, it was something else, I would still support it. It's been a restaurant. It predates zoning since 1932, and it's going to continue to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick.
Yep.
Okay, to move on? We'll
Yeah.
move on. Mr. Boyer.
Okay, appreciate that. We did, I think, one of you mentioned town zoning overhaul, and I know that that's been in the works for a few years now. I guess, can you critique, for both candidates, can you critique how that process has gone so far? And as we move forward, what should the priorities for the town be in terms of looking at zoning laws?
Okay, now we'll go back to our original cycle. Mr. Herrick, you'll have 2 minutes on this subject.
The town took on, a couple of years ago, we took on rewriting the zoning code. There was a group of individuals that were involved in writing it, rewriting it, or looking at different spots. Obviously, there's a lot of development pressure in the town of Sennett. We're growing quickly. We put up 23 new houses. We put up 5 or 6 new businesses in the last 2 or 3 years on Grant Avenue. The value, the overall assessed value of our town in the last 5 years has grown by about $80 million. Just to tell you how quick and how we are. So those development pressures are going to lead to rewriting the zoning code. There was a group of individuals that started the zoning code. They've since resigned, walked away. It needs to be picked up and started over again. We spent some money on it for the consultants and attorneys and this and that. Quite frankly, I don't think it's there yet. We're worried about the development on all the whole town, not just Route 20 or Route 5 or 34. Route 34 is going to blossom quicker than any place. So the development pressures are there. The zone needs to be written, and in the next term we'll look to get it done. Right, as of right now, the zoning code that's in place is working fine. So I don't see major changes in the zoning. Only Route 34, Grant Avenue, they're going to need some updating.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray, this issue of
The zoning process started in November of 2010 when the board authorized a committee to be put together. 18 citizens got together in January. Mr. Herrick said, I've talked about for years about zoning. We're finally going to get it done this year. Herrick to the committee members. We anticipate about a year. What I'd like to see is a year from the first or second week in December, the code is finished and the ordinance is written. So by the 1st of January 2012, we're ready to roll out a new code. I understand it may not be possible to get done at time. It's going to be a long year, he said, but I know we have a great group of people who want to do the best for the town. 18 residents, citizens, or business owners got together and started in February. They broke up into 3 committees. They divided the codes up, and they worked until the end of the summer when their work was done. The 3 sub-chairmen of the committee and Mr. Lent, who was appointed as chairman, then took that work to the consulting attorney, John Lange in Syracuse, and for the next 3 months, they worked to finish the codes. By November, they had finished the codes. This is the group that Mr. Herrick said he knew would do a great job. In November, all they lacked was the definitions and the table of contents. Mr. Lange was going to take care of that. In January, the board, under the guide of Mr. Gage, took over the codes. They had it from January 2012 to this May. In May, they decided they needed to do a survey to rewrite the the zones along the 25 and 34. It's taken over 3 years now. They've tied the hands. I'll get back to it.
Thank you. Mr. Herrick, you'll
Yeah,
have
one
1
of
minute.
the problems that we ran into was that in the zoning code, if you're familiar with a comprehensive plan, the comprehensive plan is a document that maps out the next 5 to 10 years of the town. When the new zoning code came back from the focus group that we put together, it doesn't match the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan and the new zoning code, they must mirror each other. And quite frankly, they don't. And they don't because the comprehensive plan also needs to be updated as well. And we took a look at that about 3 or 4 months ago, and we are going to start to have to do both. So if we're going to update one, we're going to update the other at the same time. It's going to take some time, but yeah, in the end, we're going to be very concerned that it's going to be right, it's going to be just, and it will help us adapt to the development pressures that we're seeing. Because this is going to be the time to update both. The comprehensive plan needs to be updated, along with the zoning code. They need to go hand in hand.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray, you'll have 1 minute on this.
3 years. We've tied the hands of the code officer. We've tied the hands of the planning board. We've tied the hands of the zoning board of appeals. And we've left business and development out there wondering what the new codes would be. I proposed in January that we take the work that the committee did, and they didn't resign, and they take the work that the town board in their year and 3 month revision, we put them together with a committee, we come up with a code. We're on step 3 of a 21-step process. When it takes place and the code's ready to be voted on by the board, we still have 9 months' work ahead of us. That will bring us almost 4 years. We need to move this along and get the town developed. Open up those highways if that's what the people want, but get the town developed.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. What we're going to try to do is at least 1 2-minute question, and then maybe we may have time for one, but we're coming in the final stretch.
All right. Recently we learned that a Victory Sports Medicine out in Skaneateles has put into, or I don't know if they've closed on it actually yet, but to purchase the Tubman Residential Center and relocate an expanded medical practice there. And they have a larger project that everyone is thinking maybe is the place where they would go for that, a big sports complex, which would obviously be a big change in that area. So my question for both candidates is, would you support that sports complex project coming to the town of Sennett?
Okay. Mr. Gray, you go first. You have 2 minutes.
I was invited 2 weeks ago down to the County Economic Development to talk to Mr. Fish. He invited me down. I made no promises. I just went on a hearing thing. For the past 2 years, this town has been trying to purchase the Tubman Center for $1. They didn't have a plan. They had a lot of ideas. It made 2 articles in the Citizen, both in 2011 and 2012. And that's the only thing. They talked about $1. They spent $10,000 on a survey to figure out what they could do with it. And the survey came back with several suggestions. Mr. Fisher was telling me that it got to the point where it looked like the town wasn't going to get it because they didn't have a plan. So the county the state put it up for auction. The auction was to proceed. The town came back and appealed to the state senator and everybody that they still want an opportunity. And this time they told them, we want an opportunity because we need parkland. I'll get back to that.
Mr. Herrick, you have 2 minutes on this issue of Victory Sports
Yeah,
Medicine.
Victory Sports. Let me tell you about the process first, and then I'll tell you, what's ahead of us. The Tubman Center was mulled over by the town for a number of months. We tried different aspects. We really did not, as we took a look at the building itself, we really did not have a use for that building. Parkland, possibly, but the use of the building, if we were to take that building over, quite frankly, we don't have a use for it. So the state was in no hurry to unload the property until an interested developer came along, and that's what preceded the auction. So let me be clear about the process, because this is going to be something that's going to come up, and I've been in neighborhood houses already. Victory Sports Medicine has a purchase offer with the state of New York, and that purchase offer is for $900,000. And as you know, through the regional council, they were awarded an $800,000 grant. And so as the process goes, that sale of that property to Victory Sports Medicine is contingent on approval from the town board. Okay? As of today, they don't have approval for anything. Okay? They have it in writing through a purchase offer with the state. They have not come to the town and said anything about what their plans are to be used. As far as a sports complex there, be very, very tough to manage that. I don't see it happening. As far as moving their medical practice there, it's something that could be considered. But as of right now, they have not come to the town with an ounce of paperwork or anything to know that they have approval to use that property. Now, that's not to say they won't. My suspicion is they'll wait till the election's over before they approach the town. But as far as that's concerned, they have no approval to build or do anything with that property until they approach the town with some paperwork and an application for consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. We'll do one minute each, and then we're going to go to closing statements, I think, at this stage. Mr. Herrick, Mr. Gray.
I think $900,000 is a lot better for the state than $1 with a town without a plan. You know, they talk about a park. What they failed to tell Senator DeFrancisco was they already had parkland. That 4 years ago in this debate, I made the statement, working in the town office, that I didn't think the town wanted a park, and Mr. Herrick bounced up and said, wait a second, we're going to have a park. Everybody wants it. It's 4 years later. I understand from what I've heard from people tonight at the town board meeting, they might go as far as to spend $3,000 on a sign announcing future home of the park before the election. I hope that's not true. If I had $3,000 and a park, I'd put it into the park and develop it. I pledge in January, when we get into office, that we will bring back the park committee. We won't wait 4 years after we promise it, and let the park committee come up with 3 months to develop a plan. We'll present the plan to the public, unlike what they did with the Tubman Center. 90% of the people, I would assume in the town when I'm walking around, had no idea the town was even going to purchase it or wanted to purchase it. We will move it forward, and if the people want it, we'll develop a park. I hope they're not spending town money to put a sign out there on a park that was promised 4 years ago.
I think you've had your time. Mr. Herrick, you'll get 1 minute.
The parcel of property that Mr. Gray is referring to that was deeded over to the town a bunch of years ago for park purposes is not a safe place, period. It's on Franklin Street, it's past the firehouse, you go down a dip, up a dip, and the park sits down in the middle of a dip. I don't foresee any kid riding their bicycle there on Franklin Street to get to the town park. As far as the development of the town park, it's under consideration. The state doesn't care whether we use it or whether we don't. I would imagine at some point in time it's going to come back into play if Victory Sports happens to move on. So, if the town park is there, it's not a safe place. We consider the Tubman Center to be a safer place, so at least a drive in there in the driveway. But again, we weren't going to saddle the taxpayers with a white elephant with this building that we had absolutely no use for. So.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick.
You're welcome.
We're now going to go to closing statements, and as we said at the beginning, we're going to reverse the order. Mr. Gray, you'll have 2 minutes for your closing statement, then Mr. Herrick. Mr. Gray is running on the Democratic line.
I thought I was last.
You are last for your final statement. You're first for your final statement. We reversed as we go in the back. So you go first.
We have a choice in 2 weeks. This election is not about a Democrat, a Republican, a conservative, or an independent voter. It's about what the right choice is for Sennett. Being able to spend time in the office to meet people's needs. When you make a promise or you say you're going to do something, you don't put it on the back burner. You directly address it. If somebody calls up and wants something done, you see if it can be done. You don't make promises. The night before the primary, somebody on Baker Road told me that my opponent knocked on their door and said to them, you realize by next October, you're going to have Verizon Fios here. It's an underserved area. That person called up and said to Verizon, the engineering department, are we going to have Fios? They said, no, we have no plans for a build-out. That same person called up Time Warner Time Warner said, no, we have no plans for a build-out. We will come out and do another survey. These are areas that are underserved. You don't tell people what they want to hear. You present facts. This is about being trust in government, being open, being honest. Government will change in January. There will be special attention paid to all the residents of Sennett, including those people that live behind the bucket or those people that live out on Franklin Street or anywhere else. We're not going to play one side of the town against the other. The bucket is a tragic thing, the way the neighbors in the town are going against each other, and they're spending lots of money. That will not happen. We've got litigation pending in Rochester right now on the Panera Bread issue, and the town has received another notice that there's more litigation. We got to quit spending money fixing the problems that were created.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. We'll now hear from Mr. Herrick, who's the incumbent and is on the Republican and Conservative lines.
My goal for my next term is very simple, and that is to continue to do what we've been doing in the town of Sennett. We've been very successful. We got houses going up. We got people wanting to come to live in our town. We put 23 new houses up this year. 8 or 9 of them came from the city of Auburn. So our housing is growing. Our business base is growing. Our sales tax is increasing. Our zoning's in decent shape. Could need some updating. I'm just going to continue to do what we've been doing. I've been successful. The town is in great shape financially. I'm always at town hall every day. I answer the responsibilities of all the people that come to me with a problem or an issue. I've been very successful, and I look to continue to do what I've been doing. As far as the gentlemen that are running with me, Gage and O'Connell, they're good guys. They put their heart into what they do. They certainly have helped the town tremendously in the last 4 years, as has another board member, Mike Adrian. So we have a nice core group of guys. They put their time in, they put their attention in, and I certainly look forward to working with them down the future. As far as my opponent's a decent guy. Can't deny that. His intentions are good. The problem behind Mr. Gray is the people that are following him, Mr. Rizzo and Mr. Bush, his party boss. If we, the town of Sennett, elect that, the town will go backwards. There's no two ways about it. And I don't think anybody in the town of Sennett would like that. I certainly like to continue what we've been doing. I won the primary over Mr. Gray pretty convincingly, and I look forward to serving in my 3rd term as supervisor. I'd like to thank Jeremy as well, Mr. Cosentino as well, the students as well. It's been a great forum, and I look forward to serving my 3rd term.
Thank you, Mr. Herrick. We want to thank you both, gentlemen, for
thank you.
giving us the last 45 minutes of your
Thank you.
time as we've talked about the issues in Sennett. We also want to thank Jeremy Boyer for his questions over the last 45 minutes. We'll be back on Thursday with our normal final forums for this week. We do have set up, originally we had the Wasco Town Supervisor race in here for a forum that has been canceled, and we're going to go right to the 13th Legislative District, where Republican incumbent Timothy C. Lattimore is being challenged by Democrat Susan E. Martini. On the following Tuesday, we'll wrap up our forums with our City Council forum. We have confirmations from Terry Cuddy, Christy Angeles, Debbie McCormick, and incumbent Matthew Smith at this particular stage. Because of the number of forums we have this year, the Citizen has them on their website on auburnpub.com right after they run on Time Warner. The Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, will run this forum on Saturday and Sunday on Time Warner Channel 12 and 98 and FiOS 31 starting at 5:15. As always, we'd like to have your thoughts and questions. You can send them at cozguytho@aol.com. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a good night and have a great tomorrow.